Hello students, welcome to engineering assignments. So far in the previous videos we have studied what is supervised learning and what is unsupervised learning. Now we are going to discuss the difference between them. So the first difference is the data provided to the supervised learning and unsupervised learning. The data provided to the supervised learning is always a labeled data. That is, a table was given. The table will be containing the input data and output data, and corresponding to this input data and output data, the training was given to the supervised model. Whereas in unsupervised learning, there was no any labeled data which was provided. So here, unsupervised learning, unlabeled data will be provided. Also, there won't be any feedback given to the model. Whereas here in supervised learning, the feedback is given from the supervisor, because supervised learning, always a supervisor will be there for providing training. Now, number of classes. The number of classes in supervised learning is known. That is, in classification, you already know how many number of classes are there. Whereas in unsupervised learning, the number of classes is unknown. For example, in image segmentation, you don't know how many types of regions are available. Suppose there are some green region and the given data is similar to that green region, we will pack them into a single unit. Next is objective of the model. The objective of the model in supervised learning is for prediction of the value. That is, if the predicted value is continuous value, then we can call the task as a regression task. But if the predicted value is the discrete one, then we call it as a classification task. But in unsupervised learning, just analysis of the data is provided. That is, analyze the pattern in the data and we are grouping it into a similar groups. Now, types. In supervised learning, the basic types is classification and regression, while in unsupervised learning, the types are clustering, association analysis, segmentation and dimensionality reduction. So I hope students it is clear to you. Now let us move on to semi-supervised learning. Semi-supervised learning. Semi-supervised learning combines small amount of labeled data with a large amount of unlabeled data during training. So it represents a middle ground between supervised learning and unsupervised learning, as there is some labeled data like supervised learning and some unlabeled data like unsupervised learning. So we can call it as a combination of supervised learning and unsupervised learning, and combines the aspects of both supervised and unsupervised learning, and it stands between supervised and unsupervised learning. Now, to clearly understand this concept, I'll give you an example. In supervised learning, the input data I am supplying to the model are having labels. Whereas in unsupervised learning, all data are unlabeled. Now let us check semi-supervised learning. In semi-supervised learning, few examples are labeled and large number of examples are unlabeled. Such kind of learning is called as semi-supervised learning. So from the previous examples, you might have understood what is semi-supervised learning. Actually, it combines small amount of labeled data with large amount of unlabeled data during training. There are certain applications like speech recognition, where all speech signals cannot be labeled. It is very difficult to do in such cases. So in those cases where there is limited amount of data which is available for training, we can use semi-supervised learning method. So this semi-supervised learning method is introduced to overcome the drawbacks of supervised learning and unsupervised learning. The major disadvantages of supervised learning is that it requires hand labeling by ML specialists or data scientists. It requires high cost to process. Further, in unsupervised learning, there is limited spectrum of its application. And one simplest example of semi-supervised learning in general is self-training. Now let me explain you how this semi-supervised learning algorithm works. So here you can see that a small amount of labeled data is available and a large amount of unlabeled data is available. For the simplicity, I am using a neural network as a model. So first, with small amount of labeled data, I will train my model, that is neural network model. After training this neural network model, I will apply to the unlabeled data. When I apply this model on unlabeled data, I will get some prediction. And after getting the prediction, I will check the confidence of the label I get for unlabeled data. You can see that the confident label data is being added to this label data. So in turn, at the beginning we had only this much label data, that is small amount of label data was available. Now you can see that the label data is getting increased. Now with this, I will retrain the model. This process will be repeated again and again, that is k rounds it will be repeating until and unless there remains no unlabeled data which can be confidently labeled. And definitely the model what you're going to get over here will be very better than the model which we have trained here. And this type of algorithm is called as self-training algorithm, which I have explained in the previous slide. Now let us discuss about some assumptions in semi-supervised learning. That is, a semi-supervised algorithm assumes the following about the data. First thing is continuity assumption. The algorithm assumes that the points which are closer to each other are more likely to have the same output labels. And next one is cluster assumption. Here, the data can be divided into discrete clusters and the point in the same cluster are more likely to share an output label. Next assumption is manifold assumption. The data lie approximately on a manifold of much lower dimension than the input space. And this assumption allows the use of distance and densities which are defined on a manifold. So these three assumptions are being assumed in semi-supervised learning algorithm. Now let us discuss about the types of semi-supervised learning. First one is transductive learning, another one is inductive learning. This transductive learning does not generalize to unseen data and produces label only for the data at the training time. Here it assumes a label and trains a classifier on that assumed labels. Now, inductive learning. Inductive learning generalizes to unseen data, not only produces label but also the final classifier. Here, manifold assumption is done. Now let us discuss some examples of semi-supervised learning algorithm. Here, S3VM algorithm is there. It is advanced version of support vector machine algorithm. So, semi-supervised support vector machine. That's why it is written as S3VM. Next is TSVM. That is transductive support vector machine algorithm. Next, we have even graph-based technique. Here, label propagation and label spreading technique is used. Now finally in this video we are going to discuss about major applications of semi-supervised learning. As I told in beginning, it is basically used in speech analysis. As I told before, since labeling of the audio files is very intensive task, semi-supervised learning is very natural approach to solve this problem. Next, it can be used in internet content classification. In internet, the labeling of each web pages is an impractical and unfeasible process. Thus, using a semi-supervised learning algorithm is more preferable in this case. And you know that even the Google search algorithms uses a variant of semi-supervised learning algorithm to rank the relevance of the web page for a given query. Next, it can be used in protein sequence classification. Since the DNA strands are very large and the rise of semi-supervised learning has been very eminent in this field. So students, that's all about the semi-supervised learning. In this video, we have discussed the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Also, we have discussed what is semi-supervised learning. So thank you students. Thank you for watching my video.